Round two.
And we're back. Your favorite not woodworking podcast. Woodworking is bullshit. I'm your host, Paul Jasper, scientist by day, woodworker by night, and I'm joined with not one, not two, but three co-hosts today. First up, Eric Curtis, fine furniture maker and content creator. I think you knew he was in the chair. But today we also have two of our close friends. First off, you know KONRAD SAUER from episode 4, KONRAD, plane maker extraordinaire, and always in my ear about all these excellent topics we talk about, as well as Justin Mabie. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul.
You're not going to give him the voice again? Paul fucked over our first recording, and now we had to restart. And Justin got very self-conscious about his, I want to say, like, Frogger from the Little Rascals impersonation. I don't know what that was.
It was me impersonating Paul impersonating me from the previous episode that was just like, why would anybody remember 10 seconds of... anyway, here we are.
It was an echo feedback loop that spiraled out.
Okay, well, why are Justin and KONRAD on today's episode? Well, I'm going to answer that for you. Because today's question, I think both of them can speak to quite well. So... without further ado, we're going to start like we did old school with the question up front, and then I'll explain why I think Justin and KONRAD are going to help us address this question. So today's episode is about the importance of storytelling. This topic has been something that I know Eric and I have talked about at length, and KONRAD and I have talked about at length. And Justin's whole artistic thing, his documentary maker channel, is about storytelling. Justin, how many documentaries did you say you've made?
I believe it's 35 to 36-ish in that range.
So obviously, Justin has a deep passion for telling people's stories. And KONRAD, you and I have had many conversations about, with art specifically as the focus, I think it's important to tell the story of that art object as part of imbuing it with the meaning that gave it life in the first place, right? Because people understand that story, they value that story, they connect to the art pieces with that story. So you can see I'm forming like two axes, like Justin's whole sort of artistic career with the documentary making is about the importance of storytelling in life, like people's stories about their life. And KONRAD, I think we're going to explore a little more on the side of storytelling as it pertains to what we make in craft. So that's kind of the big separation between the two major questions we're going to take on today. And I think this is a really important topic for everyone in terms of both of those. So as you know, being a biologist, the first thing that I started wondering about storytelling was, why is this so important to humans? Like, why do we care about stories so much? Storytelling is huge. Podcasts are about storytelling. Like, every TV show is about storytelling. When you have dinner around your dining room table, what do? You tell stories, right? Most of the time. Why are we so programmed to tell stories? And to that, I come to the evolution of humans. And, over the, say, 300,000 years, humans have been on this planet as a distinct species from the early hominid. Language and the ability to tell these stories has been something special about humans. If language and spoken communication, let's say estimates are it's probably around 100,000 years old, it only makes sense that its spoken word became the way we communicate, the way we record history, the way we teach each generation, because this is like prior to writing, prior to obviously computers, prior to even some graphic ideas, spoken word and being able to tell the next generation don't eat that, or don't do that, that's bad for you. Like, and through the process of story has been part of the human nature, right? For millennia, hundreds of millennia, right? So it doesn't surprise me that when we come to the idea of storytelling, we as humans find it very compelling, and we do it all the time, even in modern times. So, storytelling, like I said, we're going to slice it in two ways: storytelling as sort of a part of a meaningful life in a general sense, and storytelling more about your art and craft. So, I'd like to start, Justin, with you. Like, you have dedicated your life to telling people's stories, like, or a big part of your life, not your entire life, but a big part of your passion is dedicated to telling the stories of others. Why do you think you were drawn to that specifically?
It happened at a woodworking conference years ago. I kind of fell into the whole woodworking maker world without being a woodworker or maker myself. And I went to this woodworking convention knowing nothing about woodworking, I didn't know any content creator makers, let alone woodworkers outside of the content world. But as different makers kept approaching me, I'm meeting these super kind, for starters, people who are, of course, all individuals in their own sense, both in their work, but also as people. And I found everybody to be so interesting that I wanted everybody else to kind of feel what I felt in that room. But I also came at it from a sense of what goes into woodworking, because someone like me, or maybe my parents or friends back in high school or whatever, we don't know these things. We don't know why a chair costs what a chair costs that Greg Pennington would make. At the time that I visited Greg Pennington's shop and he knows the story, I was just like, great, old people chairs, And then I sat there and recorded him making one for a week, and I'm like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And that was kind of the first time I really had an understanding. And that was something I wanted to help share as well. So,
but why? Why did you want to? Why were you so energized to tell the story about these makers? I mean, I think a lot of people would have that curiosity, that's curious, that's interesting, But dude, it took on a whole life for you. I mean, 37 documentaries. Imagine the time you've spent traveling, getting to know those people, editing.
Ooh, that's an interesting question. What is the amount of time you've spent?
We
can get there later. But
it grabbed you by the collar and fucking shook you. You have to do this. Why is it? Why was storytelling that?
And also was the instinct to tell the story versus, holy shit, I want to make that chair.
That's an interesting differentiation.
Or both. Now I'm curious.
Yeah, I think to answer both questions, I really think it was maybe the sense of community that I was feeling and being welcomed into as somebody who didn't, I mean, especially at that time, but I mean, I only just now dabble in this kind of thing, woodworking wise. But I was being welcomed in without any question whatsoever. And I thought that was really unique and special, and come to find all of you are unique and special, at least to me. Maybe not your others,
but we're unique and special to everyone, actually.
Justin, when you first when you went to that woodworking conference, you said, you were already doing photography, I assume, yeah?
Correct. I was working for April Wilkerson at the time, making tutorial videos. So it wasn't anything like I was doing. They were kind of more direct, I guess you would say. It was a camera on a tripod, single camera, not a lot of, I guess, dynamic, because it's meant to be straightforward.
But you were working in the medium. You were photography, videography, sound editing, all the things. And so
Absolutely.
You came to this conference and you met these people, and maybe I guess I'm wondering the same question as Konrad of you saw this thing happening and you felt invited into this community, and your response, interestingly, wasn't I want to make a chair with Greg Pennington. Your response was, I want to watch Greg Pennington make a chair. Like there is a story. Yeah. There's a story to be told there.
Yeah.
And I want to get at the heart of like, I want to understand why he makes chairs. I don't want to understand how he makes chairs.
Right.
And I think that's the reverse order of what like Paul and Konrad and I typically do. We want to know how first. And then years later we go, oh, why the fuck does he make chairs? That's interesting too.
Right. Yeah.
Totally.
Well, Eric, in my documentary about you, there's a photo of you as a child rebuilding a deck with your dad, I believe it was.
Oh, yeah.
And that kind of father-son moment was something I dreaded. I hated being in the sun with loud tools and just getting dirty and dusty. It was not for me. So it's like, I think of it like big wave surfing kind of, where it's like, I'm never going to be a big wave surfer, but that does look cool. It'd be cool to like, show that off, be a part of showing that off, but I don't know if that's something I can do. So it was a lot of it was admiration too. I mean, a ton of it's admiration.
Interesting.
And Justin, it tapped into
really
the skills you had. You had the videography skills and the photography skills and the editing skills, and you're like, this kind of fits with what I like. This is what I can bring, and I find this compelling.
Yeah, my favorite class in school was the documentary class, and like that's not really at the time, a way to be lucrative about that. I didn't really have any ideas of what I'd want to make documentaries about. So
yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense then. Actually, if your skill set was that type of work, then you all of a sudden, I'm guessing you discovered this community of people that were very open, willing to invite you in, and kind of had that holy shit moment of, wow, here's an entire group of people that are making things that are interesting. They're passionate about what they're doing. And this would be a good opportunity for me to tell their stories. That's interesting.
So
is that right? Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Cool.
Justin,
that's really cool.
When you stumbled upon our community of people, was it a moment of like, holy shit, there's this untapped well of stories to be told? Because like, I imagine that part of the difficulty of being a documentarian is not necessarily like how to cut the story together, but finding the story that's interesting enough to drive the thing itself. Like it has to be a self-contained, interesting story. You got to
find interesting people.
Yeah, like that's got to be half the work, right?
It is, yeah.
And so when you came into the community, like, and you looked around, was it, I guess what I'm wondering is like, was it a thing of you clearly articulated this feeling of welcoming and warmth and love? Was this your attempt to contribute to the community so that it was a reciprocal relationship? Or was it a feeling of like, holy shit, there's so many stories to tell here?
I think starting it, truthfully, it was kind of like more along the lines of, I want to be a catalyst to help share this person's story, is what I was kind of trying to get at earlier.
Justin,
because
that's
I don't know
unselfish.
how this person can otherwise get their story out there and have that be told. There's not really like an affordable or realistic way to do that. And when you're choreographing your own content on especially Instagram, and like we all have to do it, there's no other way to, unless you're going to hire a videographer to do that, to do your stories for you. We're all showing what we want to show. And not that I'd never show anything that anybody doesn't want to show, but here's a whole new look at who this person is, which is why I make a point to also take them outside of the shop and you show me around like what's important to you, so that we get more who you are as a person and can connect to your work even more.
That's fantastic.
That's like fucking altruism.
That's a very yeah, that's great. That's really cool.
That's amazing.
Anyway, enough about me.
No, I know. It's not enough about you. You're on the hot seat, baby. Strap in.
Buckle up.
Justin,
That's cool.
when you tell someone's story, and you nail it. Let's say I know like you're very self-critical, so you'll never say I nailed that. But on some, I'm sure there's some of your documentaries where you got closer to the mark than others, and you're like, yeah. Like, what does it bring you to tell a good story? Like, what does it make you feel?
I think kind of going back to your point there about like me being like, oh, I don't know if that was good enough or whatever. If I make someone feel something, especially the subject of the documentary, like if they're happy with it, then I'm happy with it. I don't really care how the audience perceives it. If it gets these views or less views, that's not really what I'm in it for. So if the person that I'm covering is happy, then I'm happy. Does that answer your question really?
That's interesting because you've got this larger audience, but really you have one client, the person.
Yeah.
Or to say it crassly, but you've got one customer, one client, the person that you are interviewing in that moment, and your only job is to give them your undivided attention, and that's not common. And it's really, really great to hear.
But that's also not dissimilar from what we do in commission work.
No, exactly.
Like we put that shit on the internet, we put it in magazines, we take it to shows, et cetera, et cetera. But the only opinion that matters is the person
you're working
who bought
for.
the fucking thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
awesome.
really that's really cool that you've done that. You've maintained that individually for that person, but also recognized, obviously, that there is a larger appeal of that, but that's not the primary driver. Which is to me is an integrity issue, and hats off to you, man. That's great. That's
Don't
really
give him too
cool.
much credit yet. I mean,
that's so unusual. That's not common. That's not normally the way that goes.
Justin, I want to ask you a question that you're probably going to buck against, but I want to hear it from your perspective, not worrying about other people. What is the documentary that you've made? Like, I'm going to say, what's your favorite documentary, but that's not really what I'm getting at. Like, what's the video that you've made about somebody where you felt your voice come through the clearest?
You got it.
Yeah, see? I know you're going to be like, I don't want to hurt feelings or upset people.
No, it's not about the subject.
Yeah. Come through.
It's not about the
Justin,
subject.
it's not about the subject you covered. It's about how you presented the story.
Mm-hmm.
Which
it's about
one of
your
those,
work as a videographer, as a documentarian, as a storyteller.
I coincidentally have them pulled up right now, and as I'm just scrolling through, trying to come up with an answer here desperately. I do think that Pine Barren Palette Works maybe one, because they're like I'm very, very close to them, and but I wasn't so much at the time. So I don't know. I think maybe I just connected with them a lot, and I was very passionate about I do this for every single one, but be passionate about telling the story the correct way. But I think that especially as people who are new to me, we connected on a really awesome level during the shoot. And
was part of the connection, was there an element of you discovering something that you hadn't anticipated? Like, was there something that surprised you that kind of fed into your curiosity or something? Actually, that's a wild stab in the dark, but.
No, but you're right, and I do have an answer for that. Is they had what they referred to as the Palette House. It was a big hangout area for Patrick and Carlina's families. They built it together. There's a ton of memories that burnt down. It was really sad, and the community really got behind them. Classic, right?
Yep.
And really took care of them, and frankly, they kind of had more than they needed as a result. And to pay the community back, they now host an annual Makers Fest that they started with the excess.
Right.
And I didn't really realize that that's where Pine Barren Makers Fest originated from.
Right.
And to me, that was pretty neat.
I didn't know that till just now. That's fucking dope.
Oh,
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I watched that episode, Justin, being the one good boy among the with the other two bad boys, and I was very moved by that episode, and I was in awe of how they spun that tragedy into something that was like about joy and bringing people together and making. I was in awe through your documentary.
Yeah.
I remember that.
It was
documentary.
just incredibly fun to edit. Yeah.
So coming back to the technical side of storytelling, what were some of the tools you used in order to, like, in your craft? What were some of the tools you used to tell that story better? Like, why is it that? Is that story, is it just the emotional impact that stands out to you? Is it the, like, did you hit the beats the right way? Was the timing right? Was it an emotional arc that you hit right? Like, what is it in the craft of storytelling that you did so well in that episode that's the one that jumps out to you?
I mean, my boring answers, I feel like it's kind of typical storytelling format where, maybe 3/4 of the way in, we get to the fire aspect, we get to know who they are. Theoretically, you like who they are, you connect, and then you get to what happened. And ideally, that would make you feel something.
It did.
So you think you got the timing just right?
I think I got the timing just right. There were other elements I did. I lit a fire right here in my 1-bedroom apartment because I didn't have a lot of footage of the fire, so I just created footage of the fire. So there were certain things that I tried to kind of amplify the impact and the result of that without, I don't like overdoing it, not just crazy sad piano music, it's not like that, but
sure.
Yeah.
I will say, for future reference, there are resources online where you can get video footage,
fire footage,
royalty free, so you don't have to burn your entire fucking apartment down, dog.
I am adamant that unless it's my footage or found footage from their own content or whatever, it can't be in it.
That's fine, but I love you, buddy. Please don't put yourself in physical harm's way.
I don't. It's fine. I've been fine.
So, Justin, why, this is a great answer so far. Why do you think storytelling is important? What's your answer? Why is storytelling important to you?
Well, my answer is similar to what you described at the front of the episode, where I would say it connects us to humanity, and I think it connects us to nature, and in the concept of woodworking, I think it connects us to the piece. Both whether it be nature or the story behind the piece or the tools used to make the piece or who made the piece. I think it connects us to one another, and that feels good.
Justin, you're amazing at that. You have deep, deep friendships forged in the maker community. And
I am very lucky to have
Eric, wouldn't you say Justin is
100%.
Fuck.
He is a universally beloved figure.
Yeah, Justin, your storytelling has bonded you to people, and for myself,
well, it's his storytelling, yes, but the storytelling, I mean, honestly, the storytelling is a vehicle to get to know Justin, and then knowing Justin as a genuine human being is what makes you love Justin.
Yes, because Justin, if you hadn't shut the fuck up. Sorry, Justin, you're gonna have to listen. If you hadn't done a lot of interactions we've had is because of the episode you did on me, and I was reflecting on that. Why did that, honestly, if I could say what that episode meant to me, it was the biggest gift I could have been given. It was a gift. That's how I see it today. And I was thinking why I'm so emotional when I watch that episode. Okay. And it's not, I don't mean it oh, I love watching myself. Ooh. I don't mean it like that at all.
Yeah.
It's not about me. But I was taking a walk today, and for about an hour, and I was thinking about the importance of storytelling, and like I've cried multiple times at watching your documentary, right? And I was like, why am I so emotional about this? And it actually brought up something from my past, which I sort of unpacked today on my walk. So when I was in graduate school, I had the most difficult advisor in the whole university. She was one of the hardest core scientists in the whole place, and she was the chair of my department. She's a famous immunologist, like plain and simple, in the field. And everyone warned me, if you choose her lab, you're going to get it. Like you are going to be scorched. It's going to be scorched earth. And I was like, bring it. Bring it. Okay. And so I chose her lab. And as part of, and this relates back to your documentary, as part of our first year curriculum, we had to learn to be good presenters. And what that looked like to her was she would take the 4 students we had, she'd take us into a room, and she'd say, okay, Paul, you have to present this paper. I knew ahead of time. I had a chance to read the scientific paper. Now I'm presenting I'm presenting a paper that I just read, like, during the week, to literal scientific royalty. My advisor, like her advisor, was friends with Watson and Crick, who discovered the structure of DNA. Like they were contemporaries. Like to someone in science, she is one generation down from scientific like Nobel laureates, and so this is who she grew up with, and I'm presenting to her my view of what I just read. So she would have us present this paper, and she would record it on video, and we were expected to like give a really good presentation on like what the experiment was, what it showed, what it didn't show, why it's important. And we were told to give this presentation with like no filler words, no ums and ands and buts and wrong turns. And, you had to stay laser focused. And after you gave this presentation to your like 3 of your colleagues and her, she'd stop the video and play it back in front of all of us. Oof. And we'd have to, that was tough. We'd have to watch ourselves on video, and she would stop the video every 15, 30 seconds and be like, do you see what you said there? How many times did you say, How many times did you use a filler word? How many times did you use a non-scientific word to describe something? And it was totally fucking brutal. It was so fucking brutal on who we thought we were. We thought we were good. We were PhD candidates. We thought we knew what was going on. And she just like, in essence, tore us down, but not to tear us down, not like it's some form of sport, but to build us back up as better presenters. Okay. And I went through this for a whole year. I was in her lab for 7 years. And even during my PhD thesis, when you think you're like in the clear, 7 years later, right? You're getting your PhD and you're in the clear, baby, right? Your whole family's there. And I said something that she didn't like. I said a boatload of something or other. And she stopped me in my thesis in front of the whole crowd. You could hear a fucking Eric. You could hear a pin drop. Okay. And she goes, Paul, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter because it was between her and me. And she said, Paul, why don't you tell us how much a boatload exactly is? And I was like, oh shit, like, what do I say?
Roughly a handful? I don't know.
More than a handful, less than an assful? I don't know.
That's a big ass, buddy. I don't know.
So like, I did my best to salvage the situation and finish. And so that was sort of my upbringing about speaking concisely, not using filler words, being clear. And so now we come back to your documentary, Justin. This was more than a documentary for me. Mm-hmm. I knew this was my opportunity to take everything I had learned all those years and 20 years of practicing as a scientist, giving presentations. And this was my chance to like take my woodworking life and cast what I think is important in the clearest, most concise, most direct. Like I wanted to be a fucking laser beam in your documentary about the points that I felt passionate about. And I feel like I hit it. Like, actually, your documentary is probably the clearest I've ever spoken in something recorded. And so when I watch your documentary and
I'll
I
have
get
to watch
emotional,
it sometime, I guess.
Eric, by the way, I watched yours, you fucking bitch.
I've watched yours, asshole. I'm just being a dick.
Paul's is a little long.
Oh my God. So when I watch that documentary, it taps into a lot more than just what I'm saying about art or craft. It's actually 20 years of baggage relating back to my PhD training about clarity, conciseness, not using filler words, not using like going direct to the point like a laser. And so when I see this gift you gave me of a documentary, like it takes that whole life experience and wraps it up into this 45, as you said, it was long, 45-minute documentary. You could have edited shorter, bitch.
No, truthfully, I know this is off topic, but yours was that length because I loved so much of what you were saying. Like I typically
it didn't feel long.
Yeah, I record like interviews just like generally, we'll say on average, or maybe an hour. That I shoot, that's an hour of you talking, and they end up 20 to 30 minutes long. I gotta play God here and cut out half of what you're saying, and that's really challenging for me to decide what you said is not important enough to represent your life now. It's just it's a very weird feeling, but you had so much to say that I found so much value in that it was impossible for me to take things out. Eric, on the other hand, that was easy.
Oh, I mean, that was a fucking 10-minute video, man. Absolutely.
So anyway,
a lot of nonsense.
To sum it up, I think sometimes there are, and I only reflected on this today. This became clear to me today on my walk, reflecting on the importance of storytelling, that your story was far more than a story about me and woodworking. It actually tapped into 20 years of who I was as a person, some things I was struggling with in ancient history and like slight moments of trauma and fun. It all was very circular. Anyway.
Well, I wonder how many people identify with that. Like how many people will watch your documentary and identify with things that you said, and have that, I mean, not the same experience, but a similar experience, because that is why we tell stories, right? That's why we have archetypes. That's why we have story structures, for the emotional impact of it. And so, well, Konrad, I'm wondering how, like, you're well known, at least amongst Paul and I, for using stories as a, as a, I don't know if it's like a next to the work that you create. Like, I don't know if it's parallel to, subsequent to, I don't know quite where the story falls in relation to the objects that you make or the art that you make, but how do you employ stories in your work, and why do you think it's important?
I was thinking, Joel and I were talking about this actually at supper, and we were just kind of sitting at the table looking around and realizing that I can't really look anywhere in our house and not see something that is there for a reason. And it has a story to it. It's not haphazard. It's not, bought at a big box store. It was either a gift from somebody, something I made, or something that we inherited. So everything has a story behind it. And I grew up with that at a really young age. Like my mom's parents left Crimea around 1911, and they had two things with them when they came across the ocean on a boat: a fork and a plate. And so growing up as a kid, that fork, it's just a crappy fork, but it was way more than just a crappy fork, because it was one of two possessions that they had other than the clothing that they were wearing. And my grandma was similar. She spent a month living in an igloo when she was in her 50s because she always wanted to do that. And she got to befriend a bunch of people up in Pond Inlet, which is a northern community on James Bay, and befriended a bunch of artists, and over the years acquired art from them. And so as a kid, being in their house, everything had a story, that everything was there for a reason and had meaning. And so I just got steeped in that. Like nothing was really accidental. And so, for me, I mean, I worked in design and marketing and advertising. And so, I worked with a writer. The creative director was a writer, a very, very good one. And he said, everything is about the story. Even if it's 2 words, or even if it's just visual, your job is to tell a story, because that's how human beings connect with one another. And so it was always there. So as a kid, everything was always had a story to it. And then in my working career, it was all about telling a story, inviting people to participate. And so when I got out of that world, when I wanted my soul back, and
was that like corporate design and marketing?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. I got to do some really great stuff, but I remember there was one moment where I was doing a press proofing in Montreal of an annual report that we had just finished doing, and I got to fly all over North America doing photo shoots and everything. It was amazing. And I'm looking at this annual report thinking, coming off the press, and I'm approving it, thinking, this doesn't matter. This doesn't really matter. This is not making anybody's life any better in that big picture sense of things.
Yeah.
And so that was the implement the exit strategy right now. And I was making furniture on my own and really enjoying that, and had a few commissions, and I loved the one-to-one relationship. I wanted to work for a single person. I did not want to be doing things en masse. And so
and Konrad, with your plane making business, you engage in many one-to-one relationships and pursue them to a very serious degree.
I go out of my way to create a situation where there's a higher chance of engagement with a customer. I mean,
how do you mean?
Well, okay, perfect example. Paul's a customer from years and years and years ago, right?
And now you can't get rid of him.
And I'm on your fucking podcast. But that, to me, that is an example of how, and not every customer for plane making or furniture making, or frankly, whatever the hell I'm making, not everybody is interested in engaging on that deep of a level. But I will throw as many crumbs and as many opportunities and as many ideas or notions as I possibly can. I'll go out of my way to do it as an invitation for them to engage if they want to. Because frankly, that is way more interesting and way more fun for me as a maker. I mean, I can make planes in my sleep. I know how to do it. I've made almost 800 now.
Damn.
But the people that I get to work for are fucking great.
Eric,
they are really, cool. Really great.
That's what I was wondering, right? Is like, what is the there's obviously a difference in approach in making a story for a large audience, like in marketing and in design and whatnot, versus telling a story to or for an individual about an individual object. The building blocks are still the same.
They are,
but the engagement is different, I assume.
The engagement is different, except I'm sure we have all been in situations where we have eavesdropped on a situation of somebody relaying something to somebody else. And we're hearing that part of that. We get little snippets of that going, shit, that sounds like a really interesting conversation. I really would love to be a part of that. That's because what we are hearing is usually a very personal one-to-one connection, but it's touching on something that we recognize we would like to be a part of, or see value in, or are intrigued by, or interest in. And that's so, and this is what I found so interesting about what Justin is doing. He's effectively, or it sounds like
he's doing that at large scale.
He's doing it at large scale, but the focus is still on the individual person.
That's so good.
Yeah,
and 100%. And recognizing that it still does have a big appeal, because let's face it, like we read stories to our kids if we've got kids when they're little. That's how we engage with people. is through the act of storytelling. And so as a maker, when we're making stuff, like whenever I can, I want to invite the person to be as involved as they possibly can, to the point where I've had furniture customers come over and hand plane their tabletop because they're interested. Like, why the hell would I not do that?
God, that's you know why? Because the furniture maker in me is like, why the fuck would I let a client come over and hand plane the top? But the marketing person in you that has that deep down experience.
No, well,
it's
like, not the marketing.
I'm not trying to lessen it. I'm not trying to lessen it.
I know, but
what I'm saying is because I don't have that experience, I would. That's not a thought that occurs in my brain.
Oh yeah,
it's not the marketing.
It's not. It's I've got a few local customers that routinely will, one in particular, Noriko, will just randomly call me and invite herself over just to see the wood collection, because she had no idea there was that much variety of color and smell and in wood. So she'll just come over. I think
it's really awesome that
make a bunch of shavings.
You providing an experience is such a big deal. I think that's so cool.
It is. It is.
Whether it be a barber shop or a tattoo shop, it's like I want to walk out of that thinking that was fun.
Yeah.
I went in, I got my hair cut. It looks good, but I want to also walk away with an experience. I talked to the person,
and I had a chance to talk to the barber, and got to know that he's got 2 kids or she's got 2 kids or whatever, some aspect of their life.
Yeah. I want to point out an important distinction, Eric. So you mentioned it being from a marketing angle, but I've known Konrad enough to know he's not doing it for marketing. He's doing it. Sure. No. Just let me finish.
No, go ahead.
I know him at this point. He's doing it because those genuine human to human connections, and Konrad, please correct me after I'm done speaking, those mean a lot to you and they bring value to your life. And that's why you invite them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my friend Jamil Abraham from Benchcrafted was here last week. And we've known each other through woodworking for 20 years now. But it was our mutual love of old, funny, air-cooled German cars that increased that connection to the point where, we've gone vacations together, we've done road trips together. And that's all through that. And that's all through those stories.
Konrad, you're one of the people that I admire. Like, you open yourself to the universe and to relationships that may or may not come with customers more than almost anyone I've ever met. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I just want to clarify. I know that I was largely making a joke, and I didn't mean it to be derisive, right? No. I don't think that was. It's disingenuous.
I couldn't believe you said that, Eric.
No, but there is also the reality that I spent. That's my only formal education, and spent 10 years as an art director. So I do also understand that component of it, and
sure.
Acknowledging it feels a little gross in a way. But that's not the motivation for it. But
that's it. That's an important distinction, right? There's the human Konrad, and then there is the business that is Konrad Sauer, and those two things are separate,
right?
And even though I think in the little bit that we know each other, I would never doubt that is a very genuine human interaction that you're having there. But we also can't not acknowledge that it does do a thing for the business of Konrad Sauer, which is invite people into the process, and it makes the object more valuable.
That's right. Yeah, and that was absolutely it does. And so there's always that tension between how do you maintain a level of authenticity with what you're doing, and to whatever, if you want to call it moral compass, whatever you want to call it, but how do you maintain that while still also, for me, being aware that it is a marketing component for sure.
So let me ask you a question. This is, as soon as we started talking about storytelling as a potential episode, and then talked about Konrad having you on, and you're really good at storytelling and objects happening simultaneously.
Right.
And I often think of the Lion Man sculpture. You know, this Germanic sculpture made of a mammoth tusk that was found in like the early 1900s, first half of the 20th century. It is a little lion humanoid sculpture, and it's dated to be around 40,000 years old. And one of the theories that comes up as to why it exists is as an aid for storytelling, right? Somebody was carving this thing because what you do at the end of the day, every day, as a person, as a hunter-gatherer out in the world, you come back, the sun is fading, and you have hours upon hours to sit around and tell stories. And eventually, what you do instinctually, and I think we do this as children as well, is you find visual aids to help you tell a better story.
Right.
And so this Lion Man sculpture comes about, and this to me is kind of a tell that we have a drive to make things. But my question that I'm getting at is the object is the object an aid to the storytelling, or is the object an end in and of itself? Is the storytelling an aid to sell the object?
Ooh.
That's a good question. I think they're both. They can be both. I don't think they can be one or the other, but they can also be both. Like
I don't disagree with that, but it sounds to me like, from everything that you've said, from growing up with objects that are imbued with meaning, and then you sought this life where the things that you make have meaning, and you keep doing this thing, that the story it's from your perspective, and I'm projecting right now. Sounds like the story is the important thing, and the object is like the manifestation of the story.
Yeah. So this gets to, is it the journey or the destination, right?
Okay, sure.
It's a lot of that. So there's a reason I drive a 40-year-old funny German car, because it is about the journey as much as it is about the destination. So, for example, I was just in Australia for 3 weeks in March, and I was working with, I did a 1-week class with somebody that I'd never met in person, Glenn Rundle. Shout out to Glenn and Lisa. And I taught a table making class. And so Glenn was graciously made arrangements to have some really great Australian woods for me to use to make the table that I was going to make to bring home. And so Glenn was also going to make a table. So to me, it was a no-brainer for me to take offcuts from my dining room table that I'm sitting at right now, take them in my suitcase, take them to Australia, and Glenn used those for the socks for his table. Because why the fuck wouldn't you do that? The whole point of doing anything is to try and figure out a way. How do I got immersed for 3 weeks with Glenn and his family. It was an amazing experience. So the least I can do is try and figure out what are some other ways that I can help make this relationship even more interesting, or more personal. And so to me, that was not even a hesitation of, should I do this or not? It's no. This is the only fucking option I've got. I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do. It's a total no-brainer. So I'm not sure why I'm wired that way, but to me, that's part of the go out of my way to try and make a connection with somebody beyond just the thing that we're working on, right? So Glenn's working on his table, and he got some amazing wood that I'm working with, some Australian hardwoods, and he's got these curly maple feet that he is putting onto his table. Like, that to me that's why I do everything.
So the object is a vehicle to tell the story, but the story is I don't want to say a vehicle for the relationship, but like,
no, 100% it is. 100%
you know?
It is.
Like, it's parallel to the relationship.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm always looking to try and come up with a situation where everybody feels like they won, right? Like, like that is a perfect scenario to me. If you're doing something with somebody else and somebody feels like, this is a lot of work, I feel like I got the short end of the stick, that sucks.
Yeah,
always trying to figure out how do we create, or how can I help create a set of situations or circumstances or whatever it is where everybody feels like, oh my God, this was amazing. And whether that's a customer for a plane, a piece of furniture, a student, I don't know, anything, like, why not operate that way?
Justin, have you ever felt that way about a documentary? Like, have you ever put one out there and you were like, fuck, this hits on all levels? Everybody wins. The viewer, the person I made it for, me, everybody wins.
I actually genuinely do strive for that. I like to believe that. I want someone to walk away thinking, okay, this dude just captured this moment in my life and depicted it honestly with authenticity. This represents me well. Remember earlier when I said I would start talking and forget my train of thought?
Are you 3 drinks
buddy,
in? Are you 3
buddy,
drinks
that's
in?
half our episodes, man.
Oh, golly. Yeah, so I want them to think, okay, I just got this story that is now going to live on the internet, probably long past we exist. I will give them the photos that I take. I generally try to take some photos for thumbnails, for Instagram content, promos. I try to give them those, like, use as you'd like. And yeah, I don't, because I can't afford to pay my subjects for their time. Like, people dedicate, whether it be a day or 2 days on a weekend, to me, for me to put this out on my channel, not theirs. I don't want them thinking that they're being taken advantage of or anything like that.
I felt like I was taking advantage of you.
Right. I don't think anybody's ever felt taken advantage of, dog.
Yeah, but that actually is a really important recognition, because that's everybody winning. Right?
Yeah, well, Conrad, what you were saying, I didn't want to be like, that's totally like me, because you sounded like such a genuine and awesome person saying it. I didn't want to be like, yeah, me too. But I resonate a lot with what you're saying. I really do. My whole life is just dedicated to not being a burden to anybody else. I want everybody to be happy.
But you're also doing that in a vehicle that you find creative satisfaction in. Like, you find meaning in the telling of the story itself, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So then it is that win-win, right? Because you have this urge to do a thing. You never wanted to get dusty as a kid, but you were drawn to film school, to documentaries, to figuring out how to tell stories. And now you've developed your skill set enough to the point where you can, as Paul kept saying over and over, give this gift to us to be able to be like, I can see myself from a different angle. So from our perspective, it's really interesting and engaging and emotional. And then hopefully that's also giving value to the viewer of like, here's a thing that inspires you to go develop skill, go make a thing, go make your life better. So like,
it sounds like a win-win to me.
That's the definition of everybody winning, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying like I don't feel like I win. Every time I put one of these out, I'm very happy and excited to help share somebody else's story.
So, by the way, this conversation, like, we're at 53 minutes. It feels like 5 minutes. Konrad, what you said about it's just epic. I mean, your approach to people, your approach to the relationships, completely inspiring. Okay, and I know you've affected me. So, Eric, I want to turn the spotlight onto you. So, and the question I have for you is,
I'm kind of a shrinking violet when you turn the spotlight on me. I don't know.
No, it's, Konrad started the conversation about the importance of storytelling about the object, like with the fork fork is symbolic of so much. It's not a fork. That fork is a symbol of so much more. So that how this relates to every listener who makes anything. I'm sure that anything you've made is symbolic of more than just an object, unless you're batching them out by the thousands like a factory. Like each object has moments in it, stories in it. Your life is in it. Your life hour, like life is short, right? Like bookended by, in theory, like eternal darkness, right? Your life is so short, and you're giving it to this object. Like, wow. Okay, so Eric, when you make a piece and you think about like the story of that piece or what's involved in that piece, like, do you tell the customer about that story? How do you tell the story of that piece? Is that part of what sets its price? Is that part of what makes it special?
Yes, I tell the customer about that story. I think it's important to tell the customer about that story because otherwise there's no justification for waiting, a year, 18 months for me to make a piece. If not, like, hey, I would like you asked me to make X, and it is in the back of my brain and it's percolating and I think about it from time to time and I'm waiting for the thing to strike me where I go, oh, there's the idea. And why is that the idea? And why am I going to chase that down that rabbit hole? I think those not as justification for stalling, but that is the process. And if I'm not articulating that story to a client, then, just go buy a table from Pottery Barn. Like you're going to get it faster and for cheaper, For me, I think it kind of breaks down into two categories. On the one hand, there's the objects that I've made and that hopefully I will continue to make that have deep emotional value, that they are like making things is how I process my place in the world. And sometimes what that means is during either a turbulent time in life or, at the extremes, the polar extremes, whether positive or negative, that means that some of those objects get imbued with some of that energy and some of that processing.
Some of Sarah's
then
projects.
It becomes some of Sarah's projects, but that's also been happening, before Sarah. Like that's me trying to figure out how to exist in a world where it's, hey guys, I don't know if you know this, it's fucking hard to be a human being. It's difficult, man. So it's really, it's selfishly what's happening in those moments is it's me taking the time to meditate on whatever the thing is that I need to process in my life. Mm-hmm. And the object becomes a manifestation of sitting with that grief or that joy, that discomfort or that extreme comfort. And so that's one aspect of the storytelling. And I think it's impossible not to tell the story of the object when it's those cases, because otherwise, what was the point of making it? The point of making it was the contending with the thing.
Yep.
And either you identify with that or you don't. And if you don't, that's totally fine. Then it's just a fucking cabinet. It's just a piece of wood. It's whatever it is. And if you do, then it matters.
Do you make decisions on who you work with based on what you think their ability to accept a storytelling component will or will not be?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
And I will say those stories, those deeply personal stories, I never do on commission because I don't know that I can successfully thread the needle of this is a thing that I want to express, that I need to express, that's not going to be altered or tainted or somehow manipulated by knowing that somebody is paying me to do it and they ultimately have to like it. So when it comes to the client work, and maybe that's me being self-conscious about being a kid of the early 2000s and listening to too much emo music. I don't know. But
what's that?
But when it comes to commission work, there's still really interesting stories to be told, but they're less about me and they're more about the object.
Right.
And it's more about like, what does the object do in the place that it's going to exist in? How is it affecting the home? How do you see your home existing, and how does this piece fit into that thing?
Right.
That's a story that feels, for me personally, more comfortable to work through with a client than like, hey, I'm processing the death of a family member or a divorce, or I'm getting married, or I'm healing from X trauma. Like all of those things, I don't know that I could take money from somebody and then have them watch me make it, because that's like you're exposing yourself in such a deeply personal way.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to do, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah, it is. For sure it is. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, do you do that? Like how do you process that?
Yeah, as I'm listening to you talking, I'm kind of replaying stuff in my own mind, like projects I've worked on. So I had a pretty significant shoulder injury in 2016, and like it was most likely going to be a career ender, but thankfully it didn't play out that way. So turning 50 was a big moment of gratitude. It's a whole other topic. Anyway, but I remember the first plane that I made after that injury, and it was going to. This is all fucking stories. This is all just stories. It was commissioned by a woman in Istanbul, who turns out her and her dad restore cars. That's their thing, and they have a museum. That's what they do. And her husband is from Montreal, and it was for his birthday, and they sent me a video. I was able to finish it. I shipped it to them. I got it done, and they sent me a video of him unwrapping it. And so there was this amazing connection, and they knew that was the first plane I was able to make post-injury, and I was totally comfortable with that, because it was a marker in my, I don't know how old I was at that point. It was a marker in my life, and it was, for me, it was fairly symbolic of, I had this really horrible experience, but thankfully came out of it well enough that I could keep going. And so that was an important milestone. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm just wired to be okay with that level of vulnerability. But what it did is it created this really amazing relationship with this entire family.
Sure.
You know, I mean, I've gotten to know their kids now. Like it's a pretty amazing thing. Like I've never really kind of gone down any of those roads and had a situation where it's like, I got to back up. This is not feeling well or whatever. That's never happened. And I don't know if that's the nature of what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm not exactly sure why that is.
Konrad, I think it's you as a person. I think it's you as a person.
I mean, as a formerly emotionally stunted human being, I can tell you I've never felt that level of comfort.
I don't know what it is, but it's been unbelievably rewarding.
Speaking to your point about taking on highly emotionally charged projects as part of a story.
You've taken some on.
A woman in Canada contacted me. She lost both her mother and father shortly thereafter each other, and she wanted a double urn for the two of them. And she was so nice, and she was so kind. And I don't do urns. I've never made an urn before. And I just felt like, how can I not do this? She's so kind. She's so thoughtful. She's grieving. Like, how can I not take this on? And I said, here's my idea. I pitched her. It was a large stadia box where the mom and dad are next to it. Like a little bit of their ashes are like next to each other in two little chambers, side by side, so that she can see the two of them. And I was hesitant to take this on because I'm like, what if the design, when she looks at it, she doesn't feel the warm and fuzzies about her parent? Like, what if I fuck this up? Like, what if I don't do it justice? Because like then what do we do? Like shit.
You can't. You won't, Paul. You can't, because you are listening to somebody tell their story about their experience and what happened and how they've come to you for this commission, and you've thought about it and made something. Whatever you make is going to be meaningful for them.
You know, Konrad,
Konrad, you've been too good at what you do for too long, buddy. You forgot. You forgot what it is to fuck something up, buddy.
Where were you?
Have I shown you my CD cabinet? I'll send you a picture.
Right. Where were you when I was fucking sweating bullets about saying yes to this, Konrad?
Well, what was, Paul? What was the emotional weight of that journey? Like, how did you process making that piece and finishing that piece?
Okay, so first of all, I was moved by her story, and she seemed genuine. She seemed well-adjusted. She seemed to be grieving like she what I'm trying to say is, like, everything seemed so healthy from her point of view, and her asking me like I wanted to make sure like this isn't like a landmine I'm stepping on, is essentially what I'm getting at. And everything seemed right, and I advanced an idea about the design, and she loved it. And she was emotional just thinking about the design. I sent her a few sketches, and as I made it, it was fine. Like I was cognizant that this was a very important object to to another human, but it wasn't my story, so I didn't feel the gravity. Like obviously, I've been honestly here. I'll tell you something. I've been putting off making an urn for my dad. My stepmom wants me to. I've been putting it off, and I've been stalling. Why? Because I don't want to face hard feelings. I don't. My relationship with my dad was amazing. It was excellent, and he lived a long life, 88 years, and I loved him dearly. It was perfect. It was just so good, so good. And I don't want to think about the fact that he's gone. So that's why I've been stalling. It's not like this trauma or like any, dark story. It was an amazing story. He was such a great dad to me. And I've been putting it off. And it's because I don't want to have to make the object and think about how my dad's gone the whole time. So with making the object for her, and I have to, like, I will, because I know it means a lot to my stepmom, who, I've known my entire life practically. So I'll do it. But I realize I've been procrastinating. But for the customer's object, I didn't have that, it wasn't pulling at my own heartstrings like that. So I could say, okay, I'll make this object. I make the object and I send it to her. And that's when the rubber meets the road. Like, that's when you're like, I hope this lands the way I meant it to land. Like, I hope this hits the way I intended. And she like texted me, and she's in tears. Like, she called me, and she's in tears. She's like, this means the world to me. It's the permanent resting place in my house for my, ashes of my parents. Like, I don't know if I can take projects like this. Like, it's too much. It's too much.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, I don't.
But so both of these projects have a huge amount of emotional weight. Obviously, like they're massive, but they hit completely different parts of your humanity.
They do.
Because on the one hand, for the client, the aim is to make a thing that they feel comfortable putting their parents in and sitting with. In you're appeasing their grief, and that's a moment of a thing, right? Like you make the thing, they know you're making the thing, and it all comes to a head when you show them the thing. Whereas when you're making an object for your father, that the entire process of making that thing is holding the grief. Like that is, and it's a profoundly elongated process, and it's fucking hard, man.
Yeah.
You know, and they're two different aspects of your humanity, but they're both.
They are, but they are also both a huge privilege in a way.
Yeah,
as well.
Another good point.
Right? That if somebody, like, it's maybe in those cases it is actually less about the actual object and more about the acceptance of the story that you are continuing. Like you're
1000%.
You're helping to write one of the last chapters of that person's life, and that is a huge privilege.
Konrad, you're gonna make me cry, dude.
Sorry.
Well, it's like storytelling. Storytelling can be trivial. It can be like, oh, bubblegum, like, oh, it's a story. It's a story about this. Like, I just happened to be getting coffee on a Tuesday, and then you extrapolate a step further out, and it's like, oh, it's a story about society or about us as a culture, and then you extrapolate out, and it's like, oh, it's a story about humanity, about the way people are in general, and then you extrapolate out, and it's like it's a story about someone's entire life, like you're kind of putting as you said, Konrad, you're putting the period on the end of someone's life, in like, you know, this is the final iteration.
It's interesting. You're talking about everything going out, but in actual fact, what you are doing is everything in is getting smaller and smaller. You're doing 1-to-1, but the reality is it is applicable for the however many billions of people are on the planet. Everybody experiences death.
Well, that's the like, old adage of like, the more personal it is, the more universal it is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Like,
everybody loses a parent.
Every time that we make something, we have an opportunity to write the first page or the first paragraph of a brand new story. That is what we get to do. And if we take it seriously and find and connect with the right person, that's a real privilege to be able to do that. And then they take that thing and it has its own life in their home or in their whatever, and they tell their kids about it or their whoever about it. And we get to start that. And in this case,
it becomes the fork.
That's right. Then it becomes the fork. Or in this case, then it becomes the end of the life of those two people in that box where they are together. But then,
Konrad,
that story continues.
That story continues. Can I pick up on that? So if I want to turn the volume up, even the emotional volume up even more on you.
To 11? To 11?
Let's go, baby.
So,
oh no, here we go.
You've lived with this authenticity in your house, in your family, in your life, about the storytelling, the importance of the story behind objects, living in life like that is deliberate with intention. And I suppose exposing your children to that, as our children are a lightning rod for emotion and for what we care about, have you imbued those properties or those attributes into your children by modeling them? Is this something that you have indoctrinated your family, your children into, about the importance of storytelling and how an object's not an object? An object can be much more than an object.
Oh yeah, they're fucked. They do not have a choice. It's been, from the minute that they popped out, it has been nonstop indoctrination of the value of everything and why, like, the kitchen chairs that they sit on were made by our friend Bruce, and this is the story of this. And why not? Like, why not give them some context to why everything that surrounds them is where it is and why it's there?
Do you think as they've grown up, do you think that's a thing that they rolled their eyes at as younger people, and now as they're growing older,
100%.
they're slowly starting to like not want to admit that it matters?
Yeah, absolutely. So Riley's our oldest. He's 25, and he and his girlfriend live together. They have for 2 years now, and it is so funny kind of watching him, when they come over for dinner or whatever, or, we work on his car or my car or whatever, and he notices all the little tiny things that have moved or changed or whatever. He wants to know why. Like, where did that go? What happened to that? Because
that's awesome. That's cool that it has value to him.
It does.
He knows that it's a choice.
Yeah, and it's not a monetary value. I mean, in some cases it might be.
Yeah,
but
of course. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's there's a value because he knows why it was there. He spent 22 years living with these things and using these things and this space, and why is this wall where this wall is? I explained why, because
it's funny. I don't have kids. I'd like kids one day, but sorry, Paul, I'm going to keep talking. But I think about exactly what you're talking about, Konrad. Where it's like I have my Greg chair, I have my Larissa Huff box, I have my Keith Johnson piece, and it's like, you motherfuckers better keep this shit.
Totally.
Take care of this.
Yeah, so totally.
Bet your ass I'll be telling you stories nonstop, so that
if it's important to you and you explain why it's important beyond a price tag,
totally.
They get that. You're right. You're totally right, Eric. When they're younger, they don't give a crap. And that's fine. That's the whole point of being that age. But it does filter through. I don't know. I mean, their frontal lobes are gone for 10, 12 years. But they do return at some point. But yeah.
It's honestly perpetuating the importance of storytelling from our generation to the next generation. Right. And modeling why this is important to me, why it in theory, should be important to you. I think living with intention, Konrad, as you described, it's the same. I look around my kitchen, I see knives completely forged from scratch from friends of mine. I remember one of the knives has a wagon wheel that he discovered in a field from the 1800s, a cast iron wagon wheel that he forged down and wrapped around the outside of the knife. I see Intarsia illustrations from Dan, who just visited me and wanted to give me this gift. I see cutting boards from friends or that I've made myself. It's just like, it's all around you, the community of people who mean something to you. Every time I go into my shop, Konrad, and I grab my favorite plane that you made, it connects me to you. I feel like all of us crave that human connection, and it all comes with a story attached.
Oh, when I was in Australia and I'm walking into Glenn and Lisa's kitchen, and there's your sushi set there. It's like, what the hell? Like, I recognized it immediately,
immediately.
Right. So that was an amazing story that came out of all that.
That's
right?
so cool.
You guys, I feel like I could talk about this literally forever. This has been an amazing
remember that time
episode.
we said we were going to have a second segment?
So we will be talking. There's no second segment. We're already at an hour and 18. We'll be talking about authenticity and how that interacts with social media in the after show. That was going to be our second segment. Sorry, everyone. But Konrad, Justin, Eric, I couldn't have asked for a better conversation. I was so moved by all of your stories and all of your answers. This is a phenomenal episode. So thank all of you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
For having me on.
This was great.
It's been an honor.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
You guys kind of did owe me, but yeah.
All right.
Let's let Konrad rip on social media in the after show. Thanks, friends.
We'll see you in the after show, y'all. Bye.
Okay, bye.
All right, see ya. Bye.